Today's call, if anyone, the meeting's being recorded, so if anyone would like to turn off their camera or change their name, please feel free to do that. And we're going to get started. So today's call is called International Solidarity is Brewing, and we're going to talk about bargaining. And we have guests from Buffalo, and we also have guests from across the world in New Zealand. So we're very excited. The first thing on our agenda today is just going over again what our Solidarity project is all about. And we're going to hear a report back from Heather talking about what we encountered and learned and experienced at Labor Notes. And then we have a guest, RJ. They are part of the Starbucks Workers United Buffalo Organizing Committee, as well as the Bargaining Committee. And then we have our guest from New Zealand, Joe Carolan from Unite, a senior organizer from Unite, and Kartini Clark, another organizer from Unite. And they're going to talk about the process there, forming their union and winning their contract. And then we're going to save all of our questions for the end, just so it's a little less confusing. And if you have a question for a particular person, when you put staff or put your question in the chat, you can share that too, who the question is addressed to. So I know we go over this every time, but I think it's really important to think about, we're seeing all of our Starbucks comrades who are building relationships with their coworkers, who are organizing their stores. And a lot of that in the beginning is not public, and we need to be careful when we're talking to Starbucks workers, especially in stores, if the stores have not gone public with filing their cards, because we could tip off managers and we never want to do that. So once workers do sign their cards and file for their union election and let people know about that and are public about that, then it's time for us to go into the stores and support them. And then they sometimes have an NLRB hearing because Starbucks always tries to delay the process. And then they get their election date, and most of the elections are through the mail, which takes 30 days. The NLRB mails out ballots, and then they fill them out and mail them back in, and then they have an election date. And now, once they win their election, which so many stores have done now, there is the whole new fight of winning that contract, and that is going to take a lot of community support from us. So we need to continue our support after they win their unions, all the way through the contract fight. And today we're going to be talking more about bargaining. And as DSA members, it's really important for us to always remember that nothing should be done for workers without the workers. So if we want to plan a support event, we don't do that without talking to the workers. If we, are setting up a fundraiser or something, we would never do that without talking to the workers. So always, always, always talk to the workers. And if you are having challenges getting connected with workers who've gone public, you can always reach out to us either through the Slack or through email or through Twitter, whatever is easiest, but reach out and we can help connect you to workers. Now I'm going to hand it off to Heather.
Okay, so who in this group managed to make it to Labor Notes, or maybe catch a video online, or has some idea what we're talking about here? Like some hand raises, some reacts, chats. Yes, so if you managed to get to Labor Notes, it was a pretty cool experience, as you can see here from this exciting picture of Chris Smalls talking to a crowded room full of people. Like, this is what we love to see. There were over 4,000 labor activists from around the world coming together, and there was a lot of positive energy, and everyone felt really just excited to be a part of it. And I'm hoping that we can take some of that energy and share it back with this group, as well as with DSA in general right now. So, like, as you can see here, we had some pretty good opportunities for meetups for people who are interested in organizing logistics. We also have our beautiful Starbucks workers here. And we managed to have a DSA labor meetup too, which was quite fun. But there's a lot of work to do, I think was it was really glad personally to be able to meet some of you and to make some more connections in the labor movement, because as you can see, wanted to take a moment on this call to recognize that a lot of us are also going through a lot of trauma right now, processing the overturn of the Roe versus Wade decision, as well as it's very obvious that the Supreme Court is in fact going to be coming for a lot more human rights. Marginalized people in this country are of course going to suffer disproportionately, but all workers are really going through it right now, with an undemocratic, unjust government continually eating away at our basic rights. So yeah, this is upsetting. And I did want to elevate that DSA will have is having a response to this and will continue to do so. And if you are interested in being part of that, there's plenty of space in this fight too. And we want to center this as a worker issue, because that's where our power lies, is as workers. And that's where I feel most strongly we can fight this. Like our labor is the tool that we have in this fight. And through organizing together, we can become stronger and win long term. So in the short term, I have another chapter kit, of course, for everyone. And this is just the beginning of this. We will build this out more. I know that some people who come to these calls are chapter leaders and labor leaders, and you're welcome to participate in this in any way you want. Take some resources out of here if helpful. If there's things you'd like to see added to it, please do let me know. We will also have a training about protecting abortion that is sponsored by the national organization. It's a two-part training. The first part is on July 11th, which would normally be a space for one of these calls, but we're going to move that call to the 18th of July, just to make sure that everyone who needs to get these resources can do that. I also wanted to take a chance to highlight for you that ROP, who as you know, were important in founding this our first DSA labor national campaign. ROP did a lot of the groundwork on organizing and supporting Starbucks workers here. Restaurant Organizing Project, what ROP stands for, is having a call tomorrow night, which was going to be talking about abortion access and gender affirming healthcare and what they have to do with workplace rights and organizing in food service. So this might be relevant as well to some people on the call. You're welcome to use any of these resources or not, or suggest your own to me. We're all learning here and we're all fighting together. I hate to bring downer stuff into these calls, which are like the best part of my week always to be with y'all, but it's really important we acknowledge this and like realize what we're up against, and that we're all we have as workers to fight back. So on the bright side, there is a lot of labor organizing happening right now. We're taking back power in this country for workers. We're convincing people, literally one worker at a time. I believe we can do this together. And I'm gonna hand it off to one of our Starbucks worker organizers, if they are on this call right now.
Thank you so much, Heather. So yes, thank you so much. We are going to do this. Okay, so like I said before, today a second store in Canada won their union certification. There are Starbucks unions around the world. In the US, there are franchise locations that are unionized, and in the past 7 months, I think we're up to 170 stores have won their union elections, but Starbucks has not yet come to the bargaining table in good faith. So we are excited to have our guests here from New Zealand to talk about that. And in Chile, one of the photos on the labor notes page was of Starbucks workers from the US and Starbucks workers from Chile talking at labor notes, which is very exciting for them to meet and talk about the struggles that they both face. And tonight we also have RJ from Buffalo, who's going to be talking about a little bit about bargaining and also about some steps that we can take as community members and other union members and people who support the Starbucks workers. So I'm going to hand it over to RJ.
Thank you, comrades. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me back on as well. Hello, John. Good to see you, comrade. I wanted to talk a little bit about the pledge real quick. This is something that we're trying to circulate so that after our organizing drive is really in full swing and we're ready to start taking some bigger actions, we want to make sure that we have as much community support and solidarity from other workers, customers, as many people as we can possibly get, because with a company as big and ruthless as Starbucks, it's going to be all hands on deck to fight back against this union busting and make sure that we can get some contracts and build some worker power. So we've got this pledge that we put together, no contract, no coffee. And it's basically asking people to pledge to take direct action with Starbucks workers. We're going to have a variety of options on the table as far as actions that we can call to help advance the struggle here. And essentially what this is just asking people, send us your contact info, get connected, get in the loop. And that way, when we are calling for solidarity, we have a wide variety of people that are just going to get notifications and be able to jump right into the fight as soon as we need you. If it ends up being like we need people rapidly to come out to a certain event or get prepared, then we have the network built up to do that kind of thing. We've got different social media graphics that we set up that can be circulated. You can help by posting it on your pages, sending it through whatever kind of email chains or text threads that you might have, sharing it one-on-one just with people that you talk to. We've also got printable materials. I have a bunch of it sitting right over there. And, you could take it and if you wanted to go tabling or leafleting, that's another thing that you could do. I see somebody said the QR code's not working, so I can post a link in the chat as soon as I'm finished here for you, so that way you got it. But yeah, so we have a bunch of different ways that you can help spread that, but really the most amount of people that are going to get to see that, the better it's going to be, I think. And this is our chance to really show the company, like, it's not just a bunch of outside agitators that are coming in to ruin the stores for all the workers. This is like a mass movement. There's mass movement of workers that are on board with this, and customers too. Oftentimes we know that Starbucks cares more about what the customers think than what the workers think. So it'll be nice to get everybody on the same page here. And then thank you for that. The second slide I would like to talk about real quick is the Adopt a Store that we're doing. If you go to the link, then you can register your interest for adopting a store, and then we'll get back to you with info about it. And this is also to try and build up a network of solidarity for the different organizing committees at these stores. And, there's different ways that you're going to be able to support, but we want to have points of contact for groups in the community that organizing committees can reach out to in order to say, hey, we need help with this, or hey, we have a picket going on, or we need help tabling or doing outreach of some sort. They'll know who they can turn to in the community to get some of this stuff done. And there could also be other ways to support besides just being directly asked what things to do. You could also just visit the store regularly and order your Union Strong coffee and just show your support, wear your pins in, wear your t-shirts if you got them. Just show the workers that you're on their side and that they're not alone in this fight, because sometimes it can feel that way. I also want to emphasize to all the groups that I'm presenting this to really take like a non-sectarian approach with this kind of community solidarity. I want to avoid any kind of like territorialness, or like, I know there's a lot of different groups that have been involved in the struggle and are coming sometimes from different angles politically. And we just really want to emphasize that we're all one working class. And even if we come from different angles, I think that if we can unite around this fight, then I think it's going to make us all stronger. So if you are in a city that has a bunch of different groups that are trying to get involved in this, I would say make your best effort to just reach out and build those connections and cast as wide of a net as possible to bring people into this fight, because the workers are definitely going to need it. And if there is like, any kind of sectarianism or that kind of thing going on, it only hurts the workers and the campaign at the end of the day. And yeah, I think it really makes me happy to see like all the different people that are coming together here. And I've met so many cool people just since the union fight has began. So I want to keep that kind of energy going. And I'm really happy that y'all were able to invite us on here to kind of talk about this, because we need the support. So yeah, that's it. And if anybody has any questions toward the end, I'll keep an eye on the chat and see if I can answer them.
Could you share, I know it's probably a little sensitive, but share as much or as little as you're comfortable with about how bargaining is going?
Oh yeah, for sure. So the store that I'm in right now, our bargaining, it's kind of a mess because the store, I'm at the Genesee Street store in Buffalo. We were the second ones that won our union right after the Elmwood store. And we started bargaining pretty early on. I think we were like one session behind them after they started their first bargaining. And so some of us are like members on other bargaining committees of other stores. I was on the Elmwood bargaining committee, so I kind of got a bit of a preview. I saw how theirs was going. I got to participate and then take those skills over to my store. But what's happening now is that there's so many different stores that are bargaining that the company's actually having a hard time keeping track of what is being brought up in what session, and they're being very sloppy about, you know, not remembering what was said on the last call or not having the right notes. Sometimes they're often late to calls, and I think they're trying to stick it out by having all these different bargaining sessions and instead of bargaining collectively, because their logic is, well, y'all are the ones that wanted to file as individual stores instead of one big unit, so now you're going to bargain individually too. But I think that, I don't know, I don't think that's sustainable for them to have the same group of lawyers on that many different calls having the same discussions over and over again. So that might change at some point. We might see like a shift towards like a national bargaining strategy, but at this point, the name of the game is basically that the company is trying to waste as much time as possible. They're trying to stall us out. They want us to get discouraged. They want all the other workers to get discouraged. The union busting operation is still in full swing. You know, people getting fired, people getting scared off, all kinds of different retaliation that I'm sure you've all seen by now. And the longer that this bargaining process can take, the more time that they have to try and crush the campaign in the process. And I think their hope is that by the time they're pretty much doing the bare minimum that they have to avoid getting charged for bad faith bargaining. And I think they're hoping that by the time it gets to having to make an agreement, that we're going to be weakened to the point where we can't push them off things that they don't want to not agree with. So that's why we got to build up, and that's why we need this community solidarity. So yeah, we'll see what happens, but that's the state of bargaining at the moment.
Thank you. And yes, that is, it is our place to support and help build morale. And so please fill out both of the forms. And now I'm going to turn it over to our friends from New Zealand, Joe Carolyn, and his comrade here, Gardini.
Well, hi everybody. Greetings from New Zealand. It's freezing cold here, so we're huddled around the heater. I've been an organizer with Unite since we began. I was an anti-capitalist activist, so the inspiration for that movement came from the Battle of Seattle. And great to see Seattle Starbucks on strike and, you know, elected socialists and everything, you know. In those days, we saw ourselves as kind of anti-corporate, anti-capitalist activists, and we were protesting outside stores, Starbucks, McDonald's, that kind of thing. And if you remember your Battle of Seattle, you know, windows being smashed in Starbucks kind of thing. And then after that movement, there was the big movement against the war, the anti-war movement in Ireland. That was gigantic. So a lot of us kind of moved from that kind of stuff into protesting war and imperialism. And when the war in Iraq began, I think there was a massive burnout from a lot of us who'd just seen a movement kind of ascend. Do you know what I mean? So it's like getting bigger and bigger every year, 98, 99, 2003, I think we had 40 or 50 million people on the streets against the war. And then when it happened, it just kind of all fizzled, you know? And quite a lot of activists got quite depressed and all that. I went back and did my master's in Ireland and kind of studied the movement of movements, but I was looking for an answer. Do you know what I mean? I was looking for, why did we get so many people on the streets? Why were so many people active? And then why did we dissipate, if you like, you know, and what were the missing elements? And so my partner was from New Zealand. We decided to come out here for a few years. Here I am 23 years later. And it's a lovely country. It's got Vikings and hobbits and all that. No, that's just the movies. New Zealand is a very unequal country. And even though it's got a left-wing government now at Labour and the Greens, it's still suffering, still suffering the pain of the neoliberal revolution that was brought in here as a shock doctrine in 84.
It was 84. Roger Douglas, our Prime Minister at the time, decided that we would privatize our state-owned enterprises, and that obviously failed for a while, because being so state-owned and then all of a sudden going over to privatization, everything, infrastructure, everything fell apart.
Massive. And also there were anti-union laws brought in by the Tory government when they came back in, and the Employment Contracts Act decimated unions as well. So union membership in the private sector collapsed to about whatever, 4, 5, 6%, something like that, right? So most of the unions just retreated to the public sector. The teachers, the nurses, and young workers were left to the wolves of neoliberalism. So arriving in New Zealand in this context, I heard about a gallant band of lunatics in Auckland who decided to fight the companies. And just for the context, there was a party that was quite similar to the DSA in New Zealand at the time called the Alliance Party. And it had been a breakaway from Labour because Labour had betrayed the working class. It had gone full neoliberalism. It had kind of supported wars, etc. And so there was a rise of a kind of left-wing union-led and kind of a mishmash of other kind of anti-neoliberal parties like the Greens and some others, some Maori groups, all coming together to form a wide, broad left party called the Alliance. And it, in the end, won quite a lot of elections and became represented in Parliament and councils and all this kind of stuff. So the electoral side of things was quite it grew stronger and stronger. And then you always get that devil's choice, don't you? You know, are you going to overthrow the system, fight the system, or are you going to go into a coalition government to try and change it from within? So reform or revolution, that old question. But the Alliance did join the government in '99 with Labour and the Greens outside. And when it was in power, managed to change some of the laws back that had given neoliberalism kind of full reign. And for unionists, the important thing was a couple of changes to the law that were made around access and how to form a union. And I think these are very good kind of reforms for other leftists in other countries to kind of get on your shopping list, because if you ever do have the position to change things legislatively and stuff, these are the tools that you need. These are the tools that set activists like us free, or freer, certainly. I mean, we know what an achievement it is for the American movement to be able to unionize those stores bit by bit. And I've been talking to RJ, and we see the stores and not just on the Western or Eastern seaboard, but you're starting to hit, And that looks very genuine, but you know, you're up against it because in America, you have to have over 50% of the workers vote to recognize your union, right? In New Zealand, 2 workers in any company, that's a union. Okay, you don't need 50%, right? So, and then you can start bargaining from a minority position. And we've always been an active minority in all of the companies. I think in McDonald's, what would we have about the percentage was? 20%?
Something like that, yeah. 20% of the workers are unionized, but I'm not too sure overall.
All right, yeah, probably less than that, I would say,
Really?
in rural New Zealand, yeah,
Oh,
maybe
for sure.
in the urban centers, yeah. And so, I mean, that's number one, that's a very good achievement, right? And the second kind of law that they changed was right of access. So union organizers have the right to go into any workplace and talk to workers on company time. The workers have to be sent over to us one by one. They don't want to talk to you. Well, I don't care if they don't want to talk to us or not.
Yeah, you're going to come and have a talk to us.
Yeah, we're going to need to see you, and
Yeah.
we're going to need to. And of course, workers want to talk to the union. You know, they want to sit down and tell you what's going on. You know, particularly the stores where you're told by the manager that nobody wants to talk to you.
Yeah,
We're coming
that's
for that one.
where all the problems are.
Yeah. So those 2 changes were made with the eye on the movement. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it wasn't just, oh, we're in government and blah, blah, blah. And when the alliance eventually left the government a year later over the war in Afghanistan, I think the slogan was "not one child," you know, so even the cost of one child being killed was too much for the party. You know, again, there was kind of despondency and sadness about where to go.
Yeah.
And a lot of those people who'd you know, been doing the elections and all that kind of stuff returned to the working class. So it was like a return to, we need to build a new fighting union that represents the, you know, this was the days where kind of Mac job kind of entered the Oxford Dictionary, you know, the kind of the precariat, you know, whatever the buzzwords were at the time. We didn't particularly think that there was a new subclass of Mac job, precarious worker. We just saw workers without rights. Do you know what I mean? And we knew that we needed to get those rights in order to change things. And so armed with this right of access and armed with this, you know, get a few workers and you've got the right to bargain, we went out and visited the stores. And there was, the first campaign was like a recruitment campaign, and we signed up 3,000 or 4,000 workers in the space of 3 or 4 months. So that showed us that young people did want an organization that was willing to fight them. What were the demands of the first campaign? We led supersisemypay.com, kind of a reference to the old Morgan Spurlock kind of film that was doing the rounds at the time about fast foods, but kind of in that kind of anti-capitalist milieu. And so when we said supersize my pay, it kind of struck a chord, you know, it was like this missing segment about a criticism of the kind of fast food industry. And their demands were for, at that time, $12 an hour minimum wage. So the minimum wage at that time in New Zealand was $9. An end to youth rates, which was a form of discrimination. So workers under the age of 18 were paid less than the minimum wage. I think they were on $7.50. So you had $9 and $7.50, I think it was at that time. And then the third demand, which took us ages to win, but we did in the end, was for secure hours. And we beat that in 2016, I think it was, with the kind of End Zero Hours campaign. So we really needed to kind of define the problem a little bit better than security of hours. And once we got that terminology around 0 hours, boom, we smashed them within the space of a few months.
And we got that law passed during a national party government, which is our Conservative government. Yeah, so that was a major achievement.
And so our union hasn't relied on, you know, who's in power, you know, if the Dems or the Republicans over there, you know, and, you know, with us, yeah, it's still the same shit, you know, whoever's kind of going to be up there. But if we've got tools and we're able to change these laws, so we always kind of keeping our eye on that, you know, then that allows you to even win under a right-wing government, right, through struggles. So the Supersize My Pay campaign started off with the Starbucks strike, and we picked Starbucks. We picked it particularly because it was such a symbol of American capitalist globalization. You know, nobody knew what a Starbucks was until they started appearing all over the place. They started appearing in every kind of street corner and shopping mall. And New Zealand has a very rich coffee culture, right? We were over visiting the SEIU with the Fight for 15 campaign about 5, 6, 7 years ago, maybe longer. And took us to New York, and that was great, you know. But Mike Treen, our organizer here, was running around America trying to find a decent coffee. So the Kiwis love their flat white, don't they?
Yeah, flat white. They only drink roast coffee.
Yeah. And Starbucks, no offense, was seen as a kind of flavored milkshake bar with coffee.
I mean, don't mind it. I love milk, but so coffee drinkers.
Yeah. All right. So already we kind of had a wee bit of public kind of sympathy around this campaign, you know. And we went and we unionized about 15, 20 stores here in Auckland, which is the big city, and a few around the country as well. And prepared and went and negotiated. And Starbucks was owned by a bigger conglomerate here called Restaurant Brands, which also owned KFC, Pizza Hut. It now kind of owns Carl's Jr., Taco Bell. Yeah, so all the kind of, it just gets the brand. It doesn't really you know, care too much about them, and makes shed loads of money, right? It's one of the most successful kind of fast food companies, probably like even rivaling McDonald's here.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, yeah. And so we decided that we'd launch it with a strike in Starbucks on Care Road, which is Auckland's kind of fashionable kind of
It's a
hipstery kind of area. And we had our fair trade coffee ready, and we had all the stuff ready. And then Starbucks sent out a release, and it went, oh, you've only got 3 workers going on strike, and we've got whatever, 200 partners and blah, 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 right? And so we went, challenge accepted, because we knew we had more than just the 3 workers. So we got the kind of socialist solidarity bus, old Roger Fowler and the People's Union, give us the bus. And we went around and wildcatted all the other stores. So we just pulled the bus in, went, are you in the union? Yeah, get on the bus. We're going to the strike. What's happening? What's happening? No time to talk. Rick and Morty style. Just hijacked everybody, and we rustled up about 30 or 40 strikers and brought them to the 3 down in Care Road. And it was a great day. It was music, loads of other trade unionists from everyone from teachers to bus drivers were all there in support, because I think that's a very important thing when these brave workers do go out, you know, and you have all this pressure from corporate and the media going, oh, there's only 3, you know, and suddenly those 3 workers came out to not only hundreds of other people, but, you know, 40 other Starbucks workers who'd gone on strike that morning in solidarity with them. It was just fantastic. It really started things off with a bang. And I helped to take out the first Starbucks striker in the world, just down the road here, not too far from the office in St. Luke's shopping mall. And a comrade called Nick walked out on strike and took off his green apron and burned it on live on TV. So we got branded the kind of punk rock union of the time, right? And it was brilliant, wasn't it? You know, it was we were on a roll for about 5, 6 months. We took on KFC, we took on Pizza Hut, all the other brands, and then kind of moved into McDonald's. But it kind of escalated and escalated. And I've written a little kind of history about it called Beat the Brands, which I think we've got a link for. But kind of culminating in this 2-day weekend where we were just throwing everything at them by this stage to get the deal, right? Because we were bargaining, we're hearing what you guys are saying there, you know, that they try to obfuscate or try to delay or try to drag things so people kind of lose hope, lose energy. And so with us, it was always escalate, 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 you know, attack, 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 ake, 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 the Maori spirit, right? And the escalation we did towards the end of the campaign, there were 2 events. So first we threw a massive kind of concert, which was kind of had a load of like punk bands, hip hop bands, all of that. And there was a big kind of official concert at the time called the Big Day Out, and we called our one the Big Pay Out, right? And I think it attracted thousands of young people who were also angry about the discrimination of youth rates, you know, and their slogan was equal pay for equal work, get rid of youth rates. So we tapped into that. There was huge energy for that. And then the next day, we worked with a radical youth group called Radical Youth. And we did a school strike. So thousands of school students went on strike. We got some buses again, we brought them into the city center. And then at the same time, we let that march roll down the street of the main city and occupy every one of the fast food restaurants till we pulled out most of the workers from each one. So it was like a rolling strike going down. You know, it was a big confrontation at the kind of McDonald's. All the TV cameras were there, and thousands of school kids and hundreds of workers both on strike. I think there was a couple of arrests for kind of sit downs and stuff. Everybody was let out in the end, but it was just all over every newspaper and every TV channel that there'd been this youth revolt. I think at the same time in France, there was a kind of a big kind of youth revolt in France. So we got kind of this kind of generational kind of thing was kind of editorialized around it. But I think the sight of our main street and thousands of young people and workers also on strike in all the fast food places just made them break. And the next day we got the deal at bargaining. So I think that's kind of you know, like kind of working at how to escalate the campaign and working out how to kind of do that kind of general strike thing, or, you know, that there's some kind of social movement that kind of rolls in, you know, in allyship with the workers themselves, so that they don't feel alone. Do you know what I mean? That you don't feel like there's just 3 people in this store against the corporation. People felt here that there was a generation behind them, that there was a social movement behind them, that there were other unions behind them, and people got the confidence to strike. And the Starbucks stuff spread to all the other places. It spread to cinemas, it spread to fast foods and call centers, yeah.
Security.
All the places that hadn't been touched by established unions because they were too hard, people were too precarious, whatever. Turnover was too high. And turnover is still quite high. And we do need to visit and recruit, you know, all the time, just to stand still. And that will never end in this industry, you know, with the constant kind of visiting and recruitment. Just needs to happen all the time. We were so successful, I want to tell you this, right? That the wages in Starbucks went from that $9 to $10.50 to $12. So we did get our $12 target, but we had to sign a 2-year deal. You know what I mean? So the first one was $9 to $10.50. Work out the percentages of that. And then $10.50 to $12 the second year of the deal. So that was a jump from $9 to $12, right? That's sizable, right? That's like 25%. And we abolished youth rates as well. So some people moved from 7 to 10, 50 to 12. So they nearly doubled their income. And it was fantastic. But years later, we noticed that there was a thing we called the Starbucks effect. You know, when we go in and visit these stores and people go, oh no, I'm really well paid. And you kind of go, yeah, because we went on strike, you know, to get it up. So you just always have to remind people of where they got their rights from, you know, where they got the free meals from and where they got the, oh no, we're really well paid. I wonder why. And that's a good problem, you know, that's a good problem to have. Yeah. So at the moment, we are just started bargaining here in New Zealand. We really want to puncture the myth that Starbucks doesn't negotiate with unions. They have negotiated with us. They've signed deals with us. They've given reforms to workers, and we've got delegates who are recognized and all of that. So I suppose we want to help the American workers cut through any of this kind of anti-union stuff from Schultz and co, which is ideological, you know. Yeah, and if in any way we can be of any assistance to you, we would like to open up our kind of bargaining, you know, experience so that you can know where we're at as well, you know. But really kind of puncture that myth that you're not going to be talked to or recognized. And anything that we can do to help the American workers get recognized or get the contract, I think is very important as well. The fight for $15 we found very, very inspiring. We sent over our activists to the United States to help in any way we can. But I think at that time, many of the companies were unsuccessful in trying to, you know, get that kind of contract at the end. So I think, I don't know, but we detect maybe that things are changing again in America. And just to the DSA comrades and people who are political, who are helping, that is absolutely fantastic. I think in the first session we said, you know, what should a socialist do in this era? And I think the best thing you could do is to, as you say, adopt a store, you know. If you've got a local chapter of anything or anybody's in any kind of group or organization, the best thing you could be doing is organizing workers to join the union and support them when they're going out on strike. And I think that was the answer to the depression that many of us kind of had after that kind of initial wave of the anti-capitalist movement and the big global war movement, you know, kind of went down. I found that this is the missing key, the missing link, if you like, that building organization for the working class and socialists serving that, you know. I mean, our heroes, I don't know if you know this fella from Ireland, James Connolly, but he learned his trade organizing the workers in America before coming back to Ireland to lead the revolution against the Brits. And, you know, that's what we should be doing, all right? And so full kudos to DSA people all around the States for actually rolling up your sleeves and getting out and helping organize the poorest of workers and the most precarious of workers. And in the end, you're going to win, you know? This generation is going to win. The next 10 years are absolutely crucial for us. And as you were saying, Heather, you've got other battles to fight as well with America taking women's rights away. You know, the anger will need a machine, you know, the steam is going to need a piston, and it's workers' unions that can shut down society. You know, we've been through the lockdowns here in New Zealand. Or fast food workers were some of the first, you know, to continue working in very difficult conditions here. but we found out who was essential, didn't we? We found out who are the people that are needed in a society, particularly when it's under major pressure, like in a pandemic. And fast food workers, hospital workers, we've all found our voice. And to finish, we're going to the next stage of organizing, which you might be interested in. And we have established our bases, unionized bases in McDonald's, in KFC, in Starbucks, in all these places. But there's still tens of thousands of workers in other places unorganized that we just don't have enough cadre to reach. We don't have enough organizers to reach. We've got about 20 or 30 organizers employed by Unite, but we can't organize the tens of thousands in other small places. So here again, we're looking at legislation to change how things work, how neoliberalism works. And we're passing a new law in New Zealand called the Fair Pay Agreements, which will allow unions to bargain for sectors. And we're going to bargain for the whole hospital sector, right? So it looks like Starbucks here don't want a huge war with us and might sign up to the accord along with other kind of employers that we've unionized over the years. And what we're looking at is that the union collective is then kind of like a standard for the industry for all the smaller coffee shops and all the smaller restaurants. You know, we've organized the big chains, but then we want to pass, oh, sorry, yeah, hospo is hospitality. Yeah, it's just like, yeah, people.
Restaurants, waiters, cooks, all that.
And so by November, December, we hope to be the bargaining agent for the whole of the restaurant industry here in New Zealand, and then try and pass on all the extra rights that we've won. So for example, break times for union members is 15 minutes, whereas the statutory minimum is 10. We have redundancy rights, which many workers didn't have when the pandemic came and they lost their jobs. You know, I mean, I got workers in the casino that I organized, you know, 20, 30 weeks pay for redundancy, you know? And so I think, I'm not sure if the pandemic has kind of like acted as this massive jolt to the system. You know, it's like, it's kind of,
Oh no, Joe, you've muted yourself.
sorry.
Here we go.
People try to phone me, sorry. But can you hear me now? Yeah. So the pandemic, I think, has really been a massive jolt to the system. Lots of people lost their jobs. Lots of people were forced to continue in dangerous circumstances as essential workers. We saw a huge growth of wealth during the pandemic in the billionaire class, and people are over it. People are over it. We can't pay the rent. The food prices have gone out of control. I don't know what inflation is like in America, but it's out of control here. Cost of living is forcing everybody up against the wall. And I think this is the time where unions can really explode forward. So we're looking at other kind of changes where we could organize the whole of the industry in one jump, using these unionized bases as the gold standard. Do you know what I mean? As everybody should have a 15-minute break. Everybody should have a redundancy provision. Everybody should have the living wage. So we're using the living wage, which is 2/3 the average wage, I think is our definition, as the minimum for what we'll sign any contracts for. And then looking at the compression with the margins for other positions in every company, you know? So do you have black aprons in America? You got the green aprons. Do you have any black aprons in Starbucks?
We used to have the Coffee Master aprons. I think they might have just brought them back. And there's some people that have them from before.
All right, well, we've got kind of different, so somebody says yes, yes. So we've got kind of different grades, but what's happened is that we have been successful, cool. We have been successful in pushing up the minimum wage here in New Zealand. So when we started, it was $9. And now, what is it, Curtini?
$21.20.
$21.20. So we've nearly doubled the minimum wage.
We've gone over double. Yeah.
We've more than doubled the minimum wage through about 15 years of ceaseless activism. But that has meant that the margins are compressed in, you know, for supervisors or store managers or whatever. And so now what's happening is that a lot of the managerial kind of people who are in kind of contradictory class positions, I suppose you could call it, are now going, I'm only paid $1 more than the workers. I'm only paid $1. I've been here for 20 years and I'm only on $2 extra than the minimum wage. So now we're signing up that kind of section, you know, that didn't unionize before, and they're feeling the pain of the cost of living increases as well. So anyway, just that's kind of where we're at a few years down the road from things in America, but using these unionized bases to then talk about the industry as a whole and talk about sharing the rights that we won through our own struggle to the whole of the working class. Anything else, Curtin?
Don't have anything to add. You've said it all.
Well, feel free. Cartini's kind of one of our kind of delegates and organizers at the ground level as well now.
Wow, thank you so much, Cartini and Joe. That was amazing. I'm sure folks have a lot of questions. We're just gonna let people know about some resources that we have available, some PDFs of printable Weingarten rights cards, and then EWOC's Know Your Workplace rights cards for folks who are or are not in unions. And if you're interested in designing materials, please reach out. So now we have our Q&A. I wanna, we probably will go over time. So if people need to hop off at 9, that's obviously totally fine. And if you have a question, please put stack in the chat. And if it's addressed to anyone in particular, call that out as well. I know I have a question, but I will let other folks go first. Okay, while people are thinking up their questions, my question for Joe and Cartini is, who enforces labor law in New Zealand? Here in the US, we have a very defanged NLRB, National Labor Relations Board. They've been, saying Starbucks is not being nice or fair, but they haven't really made them feel any sort of pain. So how does that work in New Zealand?
So we have the Employment Relations Authority, or the ERA, and they are just below employment court. So what they do is they ensure that the legislation in the Employment Relations Act 2000, which is a bill that was passed obviously in 2000, it guarantees rights for workers and the unions and how they can bargain fairly. And so they ensure that all actions are in line. And if you do have a problem, you first suggest mediation. And if they don't want to do mediation, or if you want an order to get mediation, you go to them. And the authority members will help out in litigation and all that.
And then we have another department called MBIE, which is the Ministry for Business, Innovation and Enterprise. And it's quite slow, actually. We've probably pushed things faster through taking cases ourselves. For example, there was huge amounts of migrant exploitation happening here with our visa system, and we took a lot of direct action on the stores, which kind of embarrassed the statutory organization into taking action years later. Yeah. And kind of like arresting and seizing the assets of people who were basically running slave labor kind of operations through visas. So yeah, we've got statutory organizations here, but I think you need a social movement, you know, and we've got quite a good, strong migrant movement that we built up over the years, kind of because we saw how this industry uses migrants structurally to bring down wages. And when people are more worried about their visa and immigration status than they are about their wages, you're going to have to tactically address that question in a way that works. Yeah. So like last year, we just won residency in New Zealand for 180,000 migrant workers, and there's about 70,000 left that we're still fighting for. But basically, we kind of said, you were us, we were the team of 5 million during the lockdown. So everybody who is here won their rights to residency. And what's happened then is people have kind of split from the people who are exploiting them once they got their rights. So yeah, that's just kind of indicative of how you can have a government statutory department with lots of people there, but they don't enforce the law. Do you know what I mean? They don't stop the wrongdoing. You need a social movement to do that.
Exactly.
Thank you.
What's your relationship with the NZ Council Trade Unions? Hold up, let's pull up the question.
We have a couple questions on Stack. I think Brian is next. I think this question would be for RJ. Every time I go to Starbucks on my coffee break at work, I always invite my baristas to labor events and ask them if they're interested in a union. They're high school, college aged, and not very politically active. Is there any resource I can direct them toward?
What kind of resource are you thinking? Like, I think it's a good idea to invite people out, especially if it's at a union store where there's like a lot of supporters. Personally, when I'm at work, I always invite people to different events that I'm in. You know, if I know there's like a pro-choice demo or something going on, or like a pride march or something, I'm always bringing flyers and giving them out in newspapers and various political agitational materials. And I just tell them, you know, keep it in your bag, because I don't really want to get fired for having this here. But TikTok, I'm not sure about. I saw somebody in the chat said that. I don't use TikTok, so I don't know. I can't vouch for it.
Brian?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was gonna say I can share some of the resources that I usually give my coworkers, but yeah.
Thank you. And then Connor is next. Connor's question is, would sister shops in New Zealand be possible for union shops in the US for bargaining help? That one's for Joe and Cartini.
Sure, we could look at that. Yeah. We want to help you get to the bargaining table as much as possible. Yeah. And so just listening to your strategy there, at the moment you're doing it store by store, is it? Is there a desire in a few months' time to go for how does it work? A federal collective, or do you do it state by state, or city by city, or store by store?
I think RJ would be able to answer this.
I'm sorry, I was having trouble with my speakers. Can you repeat one more time?
With the bargaining starting store by store, will it eventually go federally or state by state? I know you're sort of building the plane as you fly it, but maybe if you could offer something.
Yeah, so someone said in the comments that we're bargaining shop by shop, and that's pretty much how we're doing it at the moment. There's been talk of bargaining possibly moving to be national. Right now it's difficult. We would like to try and keep all the stores that are bargaining on the same page. And when we did start bargaining, even for the Elmwood store, which was the first one, we tried to get input from people in stores across the country. that we're organizing, because we knew that the contract that we get for the first couple stores is going to have an impact on the contract that everyone else is going to be able to get too. And that likely, if it did spread, which it did, that, you know, there would be a possibility of having like a joint bargaining at some point. So we tried to build our initial contract with that in mind. But right now it is store by store.
And are there kind of demands, reforms that are kind of countrywide that you're looking for in each individual store bargaining? Like, what are breaks like in America? Do you get 10 minutes or 15 minutes? Is that an issue? Are there things that discriminate against workers, like youth rates, or how migrants are treated, like that become nationwide demands?
Yeah, I think healthcare is a big one for a lot of people. That's a big one for me, at least. The current Starbucks healthcare plan, I don't think it's very good, and I know a lot of other people just try to get like state insurance or something instead, because it's not really, you know, the deductible and everything isn't super helpful when you have no money. But I think aside from that, I know a lot of like something that the company's kind of been holding over our head is like for people who are transgender, who are looking for like gender reassignment treatment and things like that, they're being told that like they're going to get denied coverage for that, and they're kind of holding our LGBTQ identities against us, or holding it hostage in a way. So I think for me and a lot of people, I would like to see something in the contract that guarantees some type of protection around that, because that can be the cost of healthcare in general, and any of that is like extremely prohibitive for a lot of workers. But that's just something that I see in my store immediately.
Thank you, RJ, for sharing that. Yeah, it's very complicated.
Just Cartini is sad.
I'm sad because we feel very privileged in New Zealand that we do have public health care, and if you can't afford it's very heavily subsidized as well. Free hospitals, free mental health. I mean, not to say that it can be a bit slow, particularly during the pandemic, but it's outrageous what all you workers have to deal with. The cost of healthcare can literally bankrupt you. That is so unfair.
Yeah, it is terrible. I was on a picket line in Boston with fast food workers years ago, and someone got a message that their sister had lost her baby waiting for an operation, and it's just barbaric. And we're in a society that's neoliberal, but there's a free health system, and the government took care of us during COVID, and for a long time we were COVID free here, and it's just shocking how American workers are treated. And you guys don't even have holidays, you know? Like, we got another paid holiday here, Matariki, the world's first indigenous holiday, which we're celebrating in the middle of winter here instead of Christmas on the beach. And it's just terrible. American workers have no free time, no health care. And you've got the richest people. I mean, what Chris Week said was brilliant. You know, when the billionaires went to space, thank you, because we unionized our workplaces, you know. But I think the whole world is in sympathy with American workers and how you're being treated by these people. It's disgusting.
So gross.
Yeah, and if I can add to, it's also just disgusting to think that, you know, the United States is like the imperial core of the world, and all the wealth that gets plummeted from countries all over the planet and gets brought here. And what does anybody have to show for it? I mean, yeah, exactly. It's just disgusting to see so much of it concentrated. And to me, Starbucks is, I mean, this is like the biggest coffee chain in the world. It's very much a direct beneficiary of imperialism. And one of the things that I was really passionate about, I got to go to Nicaragua back in January and talk with the ATC Trade Federation and meet a lot of the coffee farmers down there that fought, and many were killed, both, you know, just trying to organize against their individual companies and also in the revolution that they fought so hard for. And, you know, they're still struggling with being a part of the global capitalist system that they're in. But, you know, it was really important to me to be able to draw a friendship between people who are growing the coffee and the people who are brewing the coffee and serving it, whether that's in Nicaragua or the US or New Zealand or anywhere. I think internationalism has to be a part of this fight because, you know, the Starbucks is an international corporation. Starbucks has stores all over the world and there's workers all over the world. So if the class enemy is international, that means we have to be international in our response to it.
That's beautifully put, RJ. Thank you. Susan has a question about after the 2006 campaign in New Zealand, how long did it take for the first union store to get a contract?
So we were negotiating for a collective contract with Restaurant Brands, which owned Starbucks, KFC, Pizza Hut at the time. I think the campaign took us about 5 to 6 months of escalation. So the initial recruitment phase, the first strikes, and then those ones that culminated in that kind of big payout and the big strike with the youth strike as well. And then it was the next day. It was the day after, yeah, that they came with the offer. And the offer was very good. And the offer was, you know, pay rise from $9 to 12, you know, over 2 years. That was you know, that was nearly, what is that, 25% or more?
Probably, yeah.
Is that a third from 9 to 12? Yeah.
Wait, no, that is a third.
It is a third, right? So here you go. I'm doing the math. 33% pay increases, not bad, right? And if you're on youth rates, you're moving from 7 to 12. So that was fantastic. And there was no way that the company could do it because the public opinion was another thing that we were focused on. You know, we were we ran a petition for the living wage that got nearly 250,000 signatures to raise the minimum wage to a living wage. So we're always doing this kind of outreach, campaigning, political work side by side with the industrial campaign. And what happened was we got 3 or 4 front pages and editorials from the right-wing press, actually, kind of agreeing with the point that the union made that we needed wages for these kind of groups of workers because these groups of workers tended to spend money locally in the economy and blah, 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 you know. And I think the system's working out its own shit, you know what I mean? It's got its own problems. If workers don't have enough money to spend, then who's going to buy all this coffee and who's going to go to these cinemas if we don't have disposable income? And so I think, you know, that helped to put the pressure on the company as well. That kind of public opinion campaign work, as well as the industrial stuff, opened the way for them to sign and be so-called good employers, you know. They were looking for a way out because we were focused on the brand and we were attacking the brand. So your industrial stuff is like guerrilla warfare. You know, it can be bothersome for the company, and the goal of guerrilla warfare is not to win a decisive battle on the battlefield and then the enemy, you know, surrenders. I think that the goal of the industrial guerrilla warfare is just to wear them out again and again and again and again and again, and do it in a way that doesn't cost us too much, but cost them lots. Like, so if you strike on a Tuesday morning, what's the point in that? You know, there's not many customers around, take it easy, you know, slow down a bit. But Friday night, Saturday night, boom, 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 strike hard, you know?
Yeah.
We look here to Australia across the water, and people in Australia get time and a half and double time for working Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, right? So, you know, that used to be a right that people had in New Zealand and in many other countries, penal rates, which was taken away. So, like, one of our kind of ongoing demands now is that we do deserve weekend rates and night rates and Sunday rates and that kind of stuff. And so when we do have strikes, we hit them when they need us most. You know, now with understaffing endemic in hospital, well, lots of these stores are understaffed now. They don't have enough staff. And if you pull out a few workers at this time, the whole house of cards collapses, you know. So back to the original one, the question, it took us about 5 to 6 months at that time. And because there was a strategy of escalation.
Thank you. I think I skipped a question. What is your relationship with the NZCTU, and what has been Richard Wagstaff's reaction to all this organizing?
So we're a member of the Council of Trade Union in New Zealand. We're probably one of the more left-wing unions there, but we go because we want our voice heard. And come the day of the general strike, we'll be arguing for it. Richard, all of this precedes Richard, so I don't know if he had much to say on it at that time, but I know he does support the work we're doing heading towards the fair pay agreement for all hospital workers. So spreading the rights that we won in our kind of contracts to the whole of the working class. I think that's kind of the trade union movement as a whole is in agreement on that.
Thank you. And then Paul has a question. What incentive does Starbucks have to agree to any individual store contract that could become a model agreement for other stores to follow? None that I can see. The union will have to be able to scale up a massive comprehensive contract campaign with the scope and militancy of our New Zealand comrades to win any decent contract anywhere. RJ, do you want to respond to that one?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I'm just rereading it. What incentive does Starbucks have to agree to an individual store contract? Well, I think right now, the way that I look at it is we're going to have to force their hand on it a little bit. And I think that depending on how well we can organize and put pressure on them, I think we can give them the incentive to give us the contract that we want if they don't already have it. I think right now they're going to try and get, I think they're trying to like test the waters with all the different stores that are bargaining and see maybe which ones are weaker or which ones would cave in earlier. And then those might be stores that they would try to get a couple bad contracts and then parade them around and say, look, this is what the contract is going to be, that try to discourage people. Something that we've seen so far is that they will take things from bargaining sessions out of context and share it around. And, you know, they use something that we get a lot is the example of, I think it was the Vancouver store that just got in their contract that there wasn't going to be transfers, and they hold this over our heads quite a lot. But you know, we just try to explain to people that, you know, in their case, that was something that they were willing to not have to have in their contract. But you know, we don't need to work off of what they built. If that's something that we don't want to give up, then we're not going to give it up. And they'll take like examples of, they'll propose something in a contract session, and it's not something that we agree to at all, even tentatively or anything. And then once it's on the table, they'll go and tell workers, oh, well, this is something that we're now bargaining over. We're bargaining over the possibility that you might not be able to transfer. How do you guys feel about that? But they don't mention the fact that the company brought it up and we wouldn't agree to it anyways. So, but just mentioning that it's an option on the table is like a way to scare people. But yeah, I think they're testing out the stores, trying to see which ones they can get as a week model contract. I don't know if that answers the question, but I think the best way that we can give them incentive to give us the one that we want is by getting all the stores on the same page about, making sure that nobody's giving up on giving any concessions too early, and that we're all on the same page about what we're sticking with, and also having the solidarity that we need to put the pressure on the company and, show them that we don't need to cave in because we're the one that holds the power in the situation. We're the ones that make the coffee, we make the money, and we can grind the system to a halt if we need to. So
No contract, no coffee.
Exactly.
I do want to circle back, Sarah, if you are still on and want to talk a little bit about the photo that's on this slide and the workers here.
Yeah, I would be happy to, because these are some incredible workers that Starbucks is treating really, really poorly. So this was taken at First and Pike last Saturday. They went out on strike. Starbucks has basically decided that there are 3 stores in Seattle that are really important to the company's image. So that's First and University, First and Pike, and Pike Place, which is the first store. And has announced that they're going to be part of a heritage district. They made everybody reapply for their job, and then basically used as an excuse to transfer almost all of them out. So like I said in the chat earlier, so you see all these wonderful, amazing workers in this photo, and only one of them actually works at that store as of like 6 days ago. So it's pretty bad. I'm gonna see if I can find, there's a really good news article about it. Let me see if I can pull it up really quick.
So it sounds like the workers have done an amazing job of, sort of showing what Starbucks tries to present itself as and what they are actually doing. And then Starbucks is trying to take advantage of their brand to rebrand their brand in their home city of Seattle. But I know that you all are going to keep fighting, and we are there with you. Thank you. So Sarah has shared a link in the chat with an article about these workers and how Starbucks is, as usual, pulling their disgusting union busting tactics. I know it's after 9, but does anyone else have any questions for our guests? Okay, there was a question in the chat about the IUF, but Paul did answer that one. It was, are you in contact with the International Union of Food Workers? And Paul said that the IOTERA Unite and the Chilean Starbucks Union aren't members of IUF, but SEIU is. And SEIU is like the parent affiliated union of Workers United. I see Susan has a question. I think this one's for RJ. Is it possible to create a gold standard contract that can be tweaked per store?
I think so. Yeah, that's kind of the impression that I am under, that we want to do. Because there is certain things that is going to vary from store to store. Like, for example, in Buffalo, we get hella snow. So a lot of times, like in the winter, there's days where we just don't want to have the drive-through be open because there's people that are getting frostbite and stuff like that. But that's obviously not going to be an issue in every state. So yeah, I would say, yeah.
And then there's a question from C. Rose. How much input support is there from Workers United on the bargaining strategy currently? It sounds like you guys are pretty much organizing yourselves without a hierarchy beyond the stores.
So yeah, my experience so far has been, it's very much a campaign that's led by the workers in the stores, by the organizing committees, and Workers United provides a lot of good like support in the forms of staffers and lawyer contacts and stuff like that when we need them. Obviously we can't do it all without them, but they're not like really, they haven't like micromanaged us from anything that I've experienced, and they're very good about like, if we need advice, this is what they would do, but other than that, it's like up to us, and we're making the calls at the end of the day. So
Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, I think it looks like we don't have any more questions, and I know we're over time, but thank you so much, RJ, and thank you so much, Joe and Cartini. This has been so valuable. And we are going to be sharing out the video for anyone who missed it. And like Heather said at the beginning of the call, the next call won't be in 2 weeks, it'll be in 3 weeks, because there's going to be a DSA organizing call around abortion, which I'm sure lots of you will want to attend. So that'll be a good way for you to be able to attend both. Okay, so thank you so much and have a great night. We'll send out some of the resources that we shared in the chat as well. If anyone wants to unmute and say thank you to our guests, please feel free to do that.
You're all invited for your holidays.
Thank you. Thank you.
Winter there,
Thank
Joe.
you
I
so
don't want to go to New Zealand in the winter.
yeah, maybe I'll take you up on that in the winter.
Yeah, wait till your winter. Yeah, I'm actually off to Ireland soon as well for a
Ah.
month. So I'm going to enjoy a bit of Northern Hemisphere.
Hey,
Great to hear
Joe,
you.
good luck in your bargaining strategy for the rest of the year. It sounds very ambitious. Love it.
Yeah, well, it's a big reform piece. We've had a Labour government in here for about 5 years, and they've been pushed by the unions. People are going, and so there's quite a lot of potential in this fair pay agreement, and it could be when you have a Bernie presidency or a AOC presidency or whatever, that you do look about how do we pass on whatever we've won, in small pockets, to millions of workers throughout America. You know what I mean? That's what we're trying to think of at the minute. What's the point in having 4,000 or 5,000 unionized people? Do you know what I mean? When the whole of the working class deserves the achievements that we've won. So yeah, it's a good problem to have. Yeah.
This was very
All right.
empowering and inspiring to hear. Thank you.
Thank you
Let's
so
get
much.
back out there and fight these bastards.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Solidarity.
Solidarity.